Was his most famous late career performance just a song? Or was it the sound of a man breaking apart in front of the whole world? When Elvis Presley sang Hurt in 1976, was he simply covering a classic ballad, or was he confessing to a lifetime of pain he could no longer hide? Did the cracking voice, the dramatic fall, and the raw emotion come from a script, or did they come from a place so deep and so damaged that the music was the only way out? We think we know Elvis, but do we know the man who chose this song at that specific time to scream his anguish through a microphone? Number 15. Why did he record it in his living room? The recording sessions for the album From Elvis Presley Boulevard, Memphis, Tennessee took place in February 1976. They were not held in a state-of-the-art RCA studio in Nashville or Hollywood. RCA had to bring a mobile recording truck to Graceland and run cables into the house. Elvis recorded his vocals for Hurt in his den, a room he called the Youngle Room. He completed the final searing vocal take around 6:30 in the morning. This choice of location is not a simple logistical detail. It is the first clue that this song was something different. By 1976, Elvis was increasingly a recluse. His world had shrunk to the walls of Graceland. He lived nocturnally, surrounded by his entourage, but deeply isolated from the outside world. He was no longer going out to work. Work had to come to him. The decision to record at home was born of this isolation. It speaks of a man unwilling or unable to face the professional environment of a recording studio. A studio is a place of business, of schedules, and expectations. The Jungle Room was his personal space, a place of comfort and familiarity, but also a cage. Think about what it means to sing a song of such immense pain in your own home. It's not a performance for strangers in a sterile booth. It's a declaration made within the very walls that witnessed his private life unravel. The Jungle Room, with its green shag carpet and tiki furniture, was a backdrop for his late-night life. It was where he ate, where he laughed with his friends, and where he sat alone with his thoughts. Bringing the recording equipment into this space blurred the line between Elvis the performer and Elvis the man. The professional artifice was stripped away. He wasn't going to a job. He was documenting his reality. The sessions themselves were fraught. Elvis was not in good health. His mood was unpredictable. The musicians set up their instruments while Elvis remained upstairs, only coming down when he felt ready. This was not the energetic, commanding Elvis of the Sun Studio days. This was a king holding court in his own self-imposed exile. The song Hurt was a perfect match for this environment. It is a song of domestic betrayal, of personal agony. Singing those words, "I'm so hurt to think that you lied to me," in his own den, not a neutral studio, gives them a chilling immediacy. He was confessing his pain in the very place he felt it most acutely. The recording wasn't an act of creation in a professional space. It was an act of exorcism in a personal one. He was trying to expel the ghosts from his own house by screaming into a microphone. The sound of the Jungle Room is on that record. The sound of the isolation, the frustration, and the deep, abiding sadness of his final years. It wasn't a studio creation. It was a dispatch from the heart of his loneliness. Number 14 was the song A Message to Priscilla. Elvis and Priscilla Presley's divorce was finalized in October 1973, but the emotional fallout lasted until his death. The separation began earlier, in February 1972. Priscilla's affair with her karate instructor, Mike Stone, was a profound blow to Elvis's ego and his heart. He who had his own history of infidelities on movie sets was now the one who had been left. The song's lyrics seem almost written for him to sing directly to her. "I'm so hurt to think that you lied to me. I'm hurt, way down deep inside of me. You know you lied, and you made me cry. I'm hurt much more than you'll ever know." These are not abstract poetic sentiments. For Elvis, in 1976, they were a direct and brutal summary of his feelings about the end of his marriage. The sense of betrayal was immense. He had built his life around Priscilla since she was a teenager. He had molded her into his ideal woman. Her leaving was not just the end of a marriage, it was the collapse of a central pillar of his identity. He was no longer the husband, the family man he had strived to be, at least in public. When he sings Hurt, the rage and sorrow are not theatrical. They're specific. Every time he spits out the word lied, it carries the weight of personal history. It's the accusation of a man who feels his trust was fundamentally broken. While the song was written years earlier by Jamie Crane and Al Jacobs, Elvis inhabits it so completely that it becomes his own story. He wasn't just interpreting a lyric, he was testifying, he was using someone else's words to say what was burning inside him. The line, "Darling, I would rather be lonely than to be hurt by you," is perhaps the most telling confession. After Priscilla left, Elvis entered a period of intense loneliness, despite being constantly surrounded by people. He dated Linda Thompson and then Ginger Alden, but the void left by Priscilla remained. The song suggests a choice. He would rather accept the pain of loneliness than ever risk that kind of betrayal again. It's a defense mechanism put to music. He is building a wall around his own heart. The performance is a warning, a lament, and a raw expression of a wound that never healed. He never truly got over Priscilla. The song was his way of telling her and the world the depth of the damage. It was a 4-minute open letter to the woman who had left him, drenched in pain and regret. He was confessing that the public persona of the king who could have any woman he wanted was a sham. The reality was a man still deeply wounded by the one that got away. Number 13, why did he collapse after singing it? On March 21st, 1976, during a concert in Cincinnati, Ohio, Elvis delivered a stunning performance of Hurt. He poured every ounce of his energy and emotion into the song, building to its huge operatic climax. He held the final note, his body trembling with the effort, and then as the song concluded and the audience erupted, Elvis Presley, the king of rock and roll, collapsed face down on the stage. His bodyguards rushed to his side and helped him up. He was dazed, but he eventually continued the show. This was not a staged theatrical fall for effect. This was a man physically and emotionally spent. The song took something out of him that he could not fake. The collapse was a literal manifestation of the song's title. He was hurt. The performance drained him to the point of physical failure. It was a confession, not just of the heart, but of the body. It revealed the truth of his deteriorating physical condition. By 1976, Elvis was seriously ill. He was overweight, his diet was poor, and he was dependent on a staggering cocktail of prescription medications for various ailments, both real and perceived. His body was failing him. The effort required to sing Hurt was immense. It is a vocally demanding song requiring huge reserves of breath control and power. For the Elvis of 1976, summoning that power was a monumental task. It was an act of will, pushing a failing body to its absolute limit. The collapse in Cincinnati was a public confession of his fragility. For a man whose image was built on vitality, strength, and primal energy, this moment of weakness was shocking. It stripped away the myth. The jumpsuit and the cape couldn't hide the reality of his physical decline. He was confessing that the effort to be Elvis was becoming too much. The act of performing, of giving his all to a song that dredged up so much personal pain was literally knocking him off his feet. He was showing the audience, in the most dramatic way possible, the price he paid to sing that song. Each performance was a battle against his own physical limitations. He was fighting his body to get the emotion out. In Cincinnati, for a brief, terrifying moment, his body lost that fight. The song was an emotional exorcism, but it came at a tremendous physical cost. The collapse was proof. It was his body confessing the truth his pride tried to hide. He was unwell, he was exhausted, and he was running out of time. And number 12 is the song about his mother. Gladys Presley died on August 14th, 1958, when Elvis was just 23 and at the height of his initial fame. He was serving in the Army at the time and was granted emergency leave to be with her. Her death devastated him. It was the great defining trauma of his life, a wound from which he never fully recovered. People close to him said he was never the same again. He lost his anchor, his greatest confidant, and the one person whose love was entirely unconditional. While Hurt is structured as a romantic ballad about betrayal, the raw, primal nature of Elvis's pain seems to go deeper than a single failed relationship. The agony in his voice feels almost pre-verbal, like the cry of a child who has lost his mother. The sense of abandonment and despair in the song taps into that foundational loss. When he sings, "I'm hurt much more than you'll ever know," he could be speaking to a universe that took his mother from him too soon. The pain of Gladys's death was a constant undercurrent in his life. He often spoke of her, visited her grave, and felt her absence keenly. His own health problems, his dependency on medication, and his struggles with weight were all things that mirrored his mother's own health issues in her final years. He was in some ways following a path she had walked. This connection adds another layer of tragedy to the song. The performance becomes a confession of a lifelong unresolved grief. It is the cry of a man who, despite all his fame and wealth, was still the boy who lost his mom. The operatic, almost overwhelming scale of his performance matches the scale of that loss. It was not a simple sadness, it was a catastrophic, life-altering event. The song provided a container for that massive, shapeless grief. He could pour all the years of mourning for Gladys into those 4 minutes. So, while on the surface the lyrics point to Priscilla, the emotional source code of the performance may lie with Gladys. The betrayal he felt was not from a lover who lied, but from a life that took his mother away. The loneliness he sings of is the profound loneliness of a motherless child. The song, in this light, is not about a single event in 1972, but about a wound that was opened in 1958 and never stopped bleeding. He was confessing that the king of rock and roll was still, and would always be, Gladys's little boy, lost and heartbroken without her. Number 11. What does the vocal break confess? In the final climactic moments of the recorded version of Hurt, as Elvis pushes his voice to its absolute peak on the final word, Hurt, his voice does something extraordinary. It doesn't just hold the note, it shatters. There is a distinct crack, a moment where the pure vocal tone breaks under the sheer force of the emotion and physical effort behind it. This is not a mistake. It is not a flaw. It is a confession. In a controlled studio environment, a singer, especially one of Elvis's caliber, could have easily done another take to get a perfect, unbroken note. The producers could have edited it out. The fact that they left it in is a crucial choice. That vocal break is the sound of a man pushing past the limits of performance into something raw and real. A perfect, smooth, operatic note would have been impressive. The broken note is devastating. The crack in his voice confesses his vulnerability. It is the sound of the polished, professional facade of Elvis Presley, splintering to reveal the damaged man underneath. For decades, his voice had been an instrument of incredible power and control. It could be tender, seductive, or explosive. But here, in this one moment, the control is relinquished. The emotion is so overwhelming that it literally breaks the instrument. It's a confession that he is not invincible. The king is fragile. The carefully constructed image is cracking, just like his voice. This vocal flaw is more honest than any perfect note could ever be. It communicates the essence of the song's message in a single, visceral sound. The lyrics say, "I'm hurt," but the vocal break lets you feel that hurt. It is the sound of a heartbreaking. It's the moment the mask slips. It confesses that the pain he is singing about is not an act. It is real enough to physically affect him, to overwhelm his legendary vocal technique. In the context of his life in 1976, the failing health, the emotional turmoil, the isolation of nature, that single sound becomes a summary of his entire existence. He was a man under unbearable pressure, and he was breaking. The song was a vehicle for that pressure, and at its climax, the pressure becomes too much, and the voice gives way. They kept it on the record because everyone in that room must have known they had captured not just a great vocal take, but a moment of pure, unvarnished truth. It was the sound of a man confessing his own brokenness. Number 10. Why choose a cover song to confess? Elvis Presley did not write Hurt. The song was first a hit for R&B singer Roy Hamilton in 1954, and later for Timmy Euro in 1961, whose version was a huge, dramatic, and emotional performance. Elvis was a great admirer of both singers, especially Hamilton, whose powerful operatic style heavily influenced Elvis's own ballad singing. The fact that Elvis chose to record and perform this specific song, a song he did not write, is in itself a form of confession. By the mid-1970s, Elvis was not in a creative space where he was writing his own material. He was an interpreter. He relied on his producers to bring him songs, or he chose songs himself that he connected with on a personal level. His choice of Hurt was not random. He could have chosen any number of classic ballads to showcase his voice. He chose this one. He chose these specific words. I'm so hurt, you lied to me, you made me cry. And choosing the cover song allowed him to confess without having to author the confession himself. It provided a degree of separation. He could pour all of his personal pain, his divorce, his grief for his mother, his loneliness, his frustration into the vessel of someone else's song. The lyrics were a ready-made script for his own tragedy. He could say everything he needed to say without the vulnerability of writing it down himself. It's a confession by proxy. He is saying, the man who wrote this, he understood. He wrote my story. This method of communication was common for Elvis. He often chose songs that mirrored his emotional state, like Always on My Mind, after his separation from Priscilla, or the gospel songs that spoke to his spiritual searching. Their Hurt was the ultimate example of this. The emotions in the song were so grand, so theatrical, that they could contain the immense scale of his own turmoil. Furthermore, by choosing a song famously sung by one of his own idols, Roy Hamilton, he was also confessing something about his own musical identity. He was returning to his roots, to the powerful R&B and gospel-infused balladry that had always been a core part of his artistry, but had often been sidelined by movie soundtracks and pop-oriented material. He was confessing his desire to be seen as a serious, powerful vocalist, an heir to the singers he revered. He was restaking his claim as a vocal powerhouse, even as his physical power was waning. The choice of Hurt was a confession on two levels. It was a deeply personal cry of pain, and it was a powerful artistic statement of intent, a reminder to the world, and perhaps to himself, of the kind of singer he truly was. Number 9 is the song about the betrayal of his own talent. For nearly a decade, from the early 1960s to his 1968 comeback, Elvis Presley's career was largely defined by a string of formulaic, forgettable Hollywood movies and their accompanying soundtrack albums. His manager, Colonel Tom Parker, had locked him into lucrative contracts that prioritized quantity over quality. The fiery, rebellious artist of the 1950s was largely replaced by a safe, family-friendly movie star singing mediocre songs in mediocre films. Elvis knew this. He chafed under the restrictions. He hated many of the songs he was forced to sing. He felt like a joke. This long period of artistic compromise can be seen as a form of self-betrayal orchestrated by his manager. He had, in a sense, lied to his own artistic potential. He had taken the easy money and allowed his revolutionary talent to be squandered. When he sings Hurt in 1976, the performance is so full of rage and regret that it feels bigger than just a romantic breakup. It feels like a confession of this deeper artistic betrayal. Like the line, I'm so hurt to think that you lied to me, can be interpreted as Elvis singing to himself or to the Elvis persona that was sold to the world. He is the one who lied by pretending to be happy making movies like Harum Scarum or Climax. He lied to his audience and to himself. The pain in his voice is the pain of a great artist who knows he has wasted precious years. The '68 comeback special was a temporary reprieve, a moment where he reclaimed his power, but he soon fell back into the comfortable but soul-crushing routine of Las Vegas residencies and touring. The sheer power of the Hurt performance is a violent reaction against the mediocrity he had been forced to endure. It is the sound of his true talent, his raw, operatic, vocal gift reasserting itself with a vengeance. He is showing the world and reminding himself of the power that had been suppressed for so long. The song is a confession of what was lost. He is mourning the artist he could have been if he had been allowed to grow, to be challenged, and to tour the world. Colonel Parker famously never let Elvis perform outside of North America. This decision, likely due to Parker's own status as an illegal immigrant, meant Elvis never got to experience the global adoration his peers like the Beatles did. This was another source of immense frustration. Hurt is a primal scream from within that gilded cage. He was the biggest star in the world, but he was also a prisoner. The performance is a confession of that profound frustration. It's the rage of a lion who knows he was born to roam the world, but has been confined to a comfortable but ultimately soul-destroying enclosure. Number 8, does the song confess his physical pain? By 1976, Elvis Presley was in a state of chronic physical pain. He suffered from a range of health problems, including glaucoma, high blood pressure, and an enlarged colon. He had twisted ankles, broken fingers, and was constantly battling weight gain. To manage this pain and to maintain his grueling performance schedule, he relied on a daily regimen of powerful prescription drugs. This was not a secret to those in his inner circle. His physical deterioration was becoming increasingly visible to the public. The performance of Hurt is not just an emotional release, it is a physical act of immense strain. You can hear the physical effort in his voice. The deep breaths, the tension in his throat, the sheer force he uses to push the notes out. It is the sound of a man fighting against the limitations of his own body. The song becomes a confession of his daily physical reality. When he sings the word hurt, he is not just describing an emotional state. He is describing a physical one. He was a man who was quite literally in pain every single day. The song gave him a way to express that physical agony in a socially acceptable way. On stage, he could transform his private suffering into public art. The performance is a primal scream against the body that was failing him. The connection between emotional and physical pain is well documented. His emotional turmoil, the loneliness, the regret, the pressures of fame undoubtedly made his physical symptoms worse, and his constant physical pain surely contributed to his depression and emotional volatility. Hurt is where these two streams of suffering converge. It is the perfect expression of the mind-body connection. The pain in his heart and the pain in his gut become one and the same, and they are both expelled in the song. Think of the sheer will it took for him to stand on that stage under the hot lights, wearing a heavy sequin jumpsuit and deliver a performance of that intensity while feeling as unwell as he did. It was an act of defiance. He was confessing his pain, but he was also refusing to be silenced by it. He pushed his sick, tired body to create something powerful and beautiful. The song is a document of that struggle. It is the sound of a man in immense physical distress, using his last reserves of strength to tell the world how much it hurt, in every sense of the word. Number 7, why is the ending so over the top? The recorded version of Hurt, and especially the live performances, ends with an almost unbelievably dramatic operatic flourish. Elvis doesn't just sing the final note, he attacks it. He holds it for an impossibly long time, his voice full of vibrato and power, before finally letting it go. On stage, this was often accompanied by him dropping to one knee or, as in Cincinnati, collapsing entirely. This grand theatrical ending is not subtle. It is a confession in itself. The sheer melodrama of the ending is a confession of the scale of his pain. A quiet, understated ending would not have done justice to the turmoil he felt. His pain was not small or manageable. It was huge, epic, and all-consuming. It required an equally huge, epic, and all-consuming musical statement. The over-the-top ending is his way of saying, this is how big my pain is. It is this loud. It is this dramatic. It is this overwhelming. He is refusing to downplay his suffering. He is putting it on display in the most grandiose way possible. This theatricality also confesses a deep-seated need for love and validation from his audience. The big ending is designed to elicit a massive response. It's a plea for applause, a demand for affection. By showing the audience the absolute depths of his pain, he is asking for their love as a balm. Look how much I am suffering for you, the performance seems to say. Now, please, love me. In his isolation, the adoration of the crowd was one of the few genuine connections he had left. He needed that roar of the crowd to feel alive, to feel validated. The ending of Hurt was a guaranteed way to get it. Furthermore, the bombastic climax is a confession of his artistic identity. Elvis was never a subtle performer. He was the king. He dealt in grand gestures, in charisma, in spectacle. The end of Hurt is pure, uncut Elvis. It connects him back to the great dramatic singers he admired, like Roy Hamilton and Mario Lanza. It's a statement that despite the silly movies and the celebrity gossip, he was at his core a vocalist of immense power and dramatic flair. He was confessing that he was not a pop star. He was a tragedian. He was a dramatic artist whose medium was the pop song. The ending of Hurt is his ultimate artistic signature, a perfect fusion of his personal agony and his unique, spectacular performance style. It's a confession that, for him, life and art were both played out on an epic operatic scale. Number 6, what does the song say about his isolation? By 1976, Elvis Presley was one of the most famous people on the planet, but he was also one of the loneliest. He was a prisoner of his own fame. He couldn't go to a movie, eat at a restaurant, or walk down the street without causing a mob scene. His world was Graceland, his private jet, and a series of hotel suites. He was surrounded constantly by his paid entourage, the Memphis Mafia, but genuine, intimate connection was rare. This profound isolation is at the heart of his performance of Hurt. The song is a cry from within that bubble of fame. When he sings, "Darling, I would rather be lonely than to be hurt by you," it takes on a tragic irony. He was already profoundly lonely. The line is not a choice he is making, it is a description of his reality. He had retreated from the world to avoid being hurt, but the result was a loneliness so deep it became a constant pain. The song confesses that this self-imposed isolation was not a solution. It was its own kind of prison. The very act of performing the song was a paradox. He was standing in front of thousands of adoring fans, experiencing a massive wave of collective love, yet the song he was singing was one of intense personal alienation. It's a confession that even in a sold-out arena, a person can be completely and utterly alone. The adoration of the crowd was a substitute for intimacy, not the real thing. It was loud, it was powerful, but it was impersonal. He was confessing to the audience that their love, as much as he craved it, could not fix the emptiness inside him. The sheer volume and power of his performance can be seen as an attempt to breach the walls of his isolation. It's a scream to be heard, to be truly seen, not just as an icon, but as a suffering human being. Can you hear me? Can you feel this? The performance asks. He is trying to use the power of his voice to connect with people on a level that his fame normally prevented. He is sharing his pain in the hope that it will create a moment of genuine human connection, a brief respite from the crushing loneliness of being Elvis Presley. The performance is a confession that the king was desperately lonely, and that the only way he could tell anyone was to sing it to a crowd of thousands of strangers. Number 5, is this the voice of an aging king? And Elvis Presley built his career on a foundation of youth, rebellion, and vitality. The Elvis of the 1950s was a force of nature, a symbol of a new generation. The Elvis of the late 1960s and early 1970s was a rejuvenated icon, a handsome, charismatic superstar in his prime. But the Elvis of 1976 was different. He was 41 years old, but in many ways he seemed much older. His health was poor, he was visibly overweight, and the years of hard living and emotional turmoil were etched on his face. His performance of Hurt is a direct confrontation with this reality. It is a confession of his own mortality. The voice on Hurt is not the voice of the young, boyish Elvis. It is a mature, weathered instrument. It has a depth, a gravitas, and a darkness that was not there in his early recordings. You can hear the miles on that voice. It's thicker, heavier, and carries the weight of his life experience. This is not a flaw. It is what gives the performance its incredible power. He is not pretending to be the young rebel anymore. He is confessing that he is a middle-aged man who has lived a hard life and is carrying a heavy burden. The song's themes of loss, betrayal, and regret are the territory of adulthood. They are not the concerns of a young man. By embracing the song so fully, Elvis is embracing this new, older chapter of his identity. He is confessing that time has taken its toll. The effortless swagger of his youth has been replaced by a hard-won, tragic authority. He can sing this song with such conviction precisely because he has lived through the pain it describes. There is also a sense of defiance in the performance. Yes, he is older. Yes, he is in pain, but listen to the power he can still summon. The performance is a confession that even as his body is failing, his voice, his artistic core, remains a phenomenal force. It's a rage against the dying of the light. He is using his voice to fight back against age, sickness, and time itself. He is telling the world, I may be damaged, but I am not done. I can still do this. I can still sing with more power and passion than anyone. It is the roar of an aging lion, wounded but still king of the jungle. The performance is a complex confession and admission of his own decline, but also a furious, powerful assertion of his enduring artistic relevance. Number 4, does it expose the dark side of the American dream? Elvis Presley was the living embodiment of the American dream. He was the poor boy from Tupelo, Mississippi, who became the most famous entertainer in the world. He had the fame, the fortune, the mansion, the cars, the adoration of millions. On the surface, he had achieved everything that the dream promised. His performance of Hurt is a terrifying confession that the dream is a lie, or at least that its fulfillment comes at an unbearable cost. The raw agony in his voice is the sound of the dream turning into a nightmare. He had everything, and yet he was miserable. The song confesses that wealth and fame are not a shield against profound human suffering. They cannot protect you from loneliness, from heartbreak, or from grief. In Elvis's case, they seem to amplify these things. His fame created his isolation. His wealth allowed him to indulge his worst impulses. The dream, once achieved, became a gilded cage. The performance strips away the glamorous fantasy of superstardom and reveals the ugly, painful reality. This is not the happy, smiling Elvis from the travelogue movies. This is the real man, bloated, medicated, and heartbroken, screaming his pain to the world. It's a confession that the price of being Elvis Presley was the destruction of Elvis Presley, the man. He had to sacrifice his privacy, his freedom, and ultimately his health to maintain the image the world demanded. Hurt is a warning. It's a primal scream from the pinnacle of success saying, be careful what you wish for. The song's narrative of betrayal and loss becomes a metaphor for his entire life. He was betrayed by the very dream he had pursued. It had promised happiness and delivered misery. It had promised freedom and delivered captivity. The performance is a public indictment of the myth he represented. He was the king of a broken kingdom. His pain was the proof that the ultimate American success story could have a tragic, horrifying ending. He was confessing that he had climbed to the top of the mountain only to find he was completely and devastatingly alone. Number 3, was this performance a rehearsal for the end? Listening to Hurt today with the knowledge that Elvis would be dead just over a year and a half after recording it is an almost unbearably poignant experience. The song feels like a premonition. The pain, the exhaustion, and the sense of finality in his voice are so palpable that it seems he must have known, on some level, that he was near the end. The performance can be heard as a dress rehearsal for his own death. It is a song of endings, the end of a relationship, the end of trust, the end of an era. In his voice, you hear a man taking stock of his life and finding it full of regret. He's confessing a lifetime of mistakes and sorrows. There is a feeling of summary in the performance, as if he is trying to get it all out before it's too late. The sheer all-or-nothing effort he puts into it feels like a final, desperate act. He is singing as if he will never get another chance. The physical collapse after the Cincinnati performance reinforces this interpretation. It was a small-scale rehearsal for a final, permanent collapse. He pushed his body to the breaking point and beyond, a pattern that would define his final months. He was living on borrowed time, and the intensity of his hurt performances seems to acknowledge this. He was burning the candle at both ends, and the song was the brightest, most furious flame. This is not to say he was consciously singing about his own impending death. But artists often channel truths they may not be able to articulate consciously. The song was a perfect conduit for the sense of doom and decay that surrounded him. His body was giving out. His spirit was weary. The music was reflecting his reality. He was confessing his own exhaustion, a soul-deep weariness that went beyond simple tiredness. He was tired of the pain, tired of the loneliness, tired of being Elvis. The song is a musical last will and testament. In it, he leaves behind a definitive statement of his vocal power and his emotional truth. It's a final, desperate attempt to be understood, not as a legend, but as a flawed, suffering man. It is a 4-minute tragedy that foreshadowed the much larger tragedy to come. It was a confession that the show was almost over, and he knew it. Number 2, why is it so uncomfortable to listen to? Unlike many of Elvis's other great ballads, which can be sad but are ultimately beautiful and comforting, Hurt is a difficult, uncomfortable listening experience. It's not a song you put on to relax. It's raw, jarring, and almost too intimate. This discomfort is intentional. It is part of the confession. The song is uncomfortable because it is too real. Elvis is not just performing sadness, he is transmitting raw, unprocessed agony directly to the listener. The vocal strain, the cracked notes, the ragged breathing, these are sounds we are not accustomed to hearing on a polished pop record. They violate the unspoken contract between a performer and the audience, which is that the performer will manage their emotions and present them in an artistic, controlled way. And Elvis abandons that control. He is confessing in real time, and he is forcing the listener to be a witness. The discomfort comes from a sense of voyeurism. We feel like we are intruding on a moment of private grief. We are hearing a man's nervous breakdown set to music. It's the same discomfort we feel when we witness a couple arguing in public, or see someone crying uncontrollably. Or we know we should look away, but we can't. The performance is a confession so raw that it feels like a violation of his own privacy. He is tearing himself open for the world to see, and the sight is both compelling and deeply unsettling. The song also confesses the ugliness of pain. Pain is not always noble or poetic. It can be loud, messy, and self-pitying. Hurt captures that. The performance has a desperate, almost pleading quality to it. There is rage, but there is also a deep well of self-pity. It's not a stoic, dignified expression of sadness. It's a howl. This honesty is what makes it uncomfortable. It refuses to romanticize the suffering. It presents it in all its raw, unpleasant reality. By making the listener uncomfortable, Elvis is confessing the true nature of his pain. It wasn't something he could easily package for public consumption. It was a destructive, all-consuming force in his life. The song is his attempt to make the listener feel just a fraction of what he was feeling every day. The discomfort is the point. He wants you to be unsettled. He wants you to know that his pain was not a performance. It was a terrible, devastating reality. Number 1 was Hurt, his final true statement. When you consider all the elements, the timing, the location of the recording, the lyrical content, the vocal performance, the physical collapse, the personal history, it becomes clear that Hurt was more than just another song for Elvis Presley. It was a culmination. It was the moment where the man, the myth, and the music merged into one single devastating statement. It can be seen as his final, most honest confession, While he would record and perform other songs after Hurt, none captured his personal tragedy with such terrifying power and clarity. Unchained Melody, performed at the piano in his final TV special, is a close companion piece, a plea for salvation where Hurt is a cry of damnation. But Hurt is the more visceral, more violent, and perhaps more truthful expression of his state of mind. It is a song of pure, unadulterated pain. The performance confesses everything he could no longer hide. It confesses the failure of his marriage and the unending grief for his mother. It confesses the frustration of a squandered talent and the isolation of a prisoner of fame. It confesses the reality of his physical decline and the emotional toll of the American dream. It confesses his fragility, his rage, his loneliness, and his deep, desperate need to be loved and understood. It was a confession that the image of the smiling, hip, swinging king was a mask, and the man behind it was dying. He used a cover song to tell the most personal story of his life. He used the artifice of a stage performance to show his most authentic self. The paradox is at the heart of his genius and his tragedy. Ultimately, Hurt is the sound of a man who has run out of ways to hide. The drugs were no longer working, the bubble of Graceland could not keep the pain out, the roar of the crowd could not fill the emptiness. All he had left was his voice. And with that voice, he sang a song about being hurt, and in doing so, he told us everything. He confessed that his life, for all its glitter and glory, had been a source of immense, almost unbearable pain. It is the most heartbreaking and honest performance of his career, and it remains his ultimate, final, and most powerful confession.